Welcome to the Minnesota Liberty Network, and here are your hosts, Bill Liskey and Drew Roach.
Welcome back.
Yep, bonus episode number 2.
Bonus episode part 2. And this is a super important episode combination of the two episodes. And the reason why is that I'm going to say these wonderful individuals. I've got, we just had Sarah and William, and now we have Natalie and Joe. And me from my position of state senator in CD2, Congressional District 2. I am fully endorsing these 4 individuals, these wonderful individuals that have worked hard to represent Congressional District 2, but also to work with those of us in other grassroots or lower offices.
And I will echo that same thing. I wholeheartedly endorse all 4 of these candidates for their positions and re-election, because it's important, as we stated in part 1 of this bonus episodes, that we've got grassroots executive board. It's really important. We need to continue to maintain and grow the grassroots in the state. And we've done a really good job in CD2 of growing that movement. We need to maintain that and continue to get people out to participate in the process and knock doors and help candidates and work hard for our endorsed candidates. So like Sarah and Will have been a crucial part, Natalie and Joe have been as well. And we just look forward to having them talk about what it is that they're going to do.
So I'm going to re-up what positions they're running for. We got Joe Ditto running for chair. We've got Natalie Barnes running for deputy chair. We have Sarah Dutton running for secretary, and we have William Beck running for delegate at large. And so, again, I endorse them for all these positions, and I look forward to it. And I thank these 2 wonderful individuals for coming to part 2.
Thanks for having us, both Bill and Drew. We really appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks, Bill and Drew. We appreciate everything you do for us down at the legislature. I see you guys fighting all the time, and I know it's not easy, so thanks for all you do.
Thank you very much. So we're going to start with that easy softball question we started with the other 2, the easiest one, and it might be even easier for you guys because your positions are relatively well-defined. So I'm going to start with Joe. Joe, tell us what you do, what you're running for, and tell us what that position entails.
Yeah, I'm running for chair for a second term here in CD2. Main job as chair is to act as spokesman for the Republican Party for CD2. I also, it comes with a seat on state exec, so I get to help set policy at the state level. And I think my job really is to make sure that everything is done fairly in CD2. You know, we've seen some other CDs where sadly there's been trickery afoot or things, they've tried to put their finger on the scale for certain people, and we don't play those games in CD2. We're a grassroots CD, and we remain neutrality prior to the endorsement, and then after the endorsement, we fight like heck for our candidates. So that's what I did the last 2 years, and that's what I intend to do if I'm reelected.
Thanks, Joe. And Natalie, so you're running for a different position. You and William, I hear, are swapping what you're running for. So why don't you tell us what you're running for, since he talked about delegate at large?
So I'm running for deputy chair of CD2. I was your delegate at large for the last 2 years. Kind of took that to another level, so I decided to run for a higher level of office within our congressional district. I do have to say that in our Constitution, deputy chair actually basically fills in for the chair when he's not available, and also is someone that can be directed and delegated by the chair for certain committees, etc. Obviously, the one thing that I love about Joe and Joe's leadership is he allows me to kind of just expand in any which direction that I decide to go in and drag the CD with me. I do remember when I mentioned the Ron Johnson, that I wanted to get Ron Johnson for our Lincoln Reagan dinner, everybody in the room just went, oh yeah, right, we're going to get Ron Johnson. He's a senator in the United States Senate. And sure enough, we were able to do that, and that was entirely grassroots. And an amazingly successful and probably one of the most successful fundraisers that CD2 has ever seen. So I want to take that passion and bring it to another level, and obviously support Joe in his chair position. And he's already allowed me to do that, occasionally, obviously going to state exec when he's been out of the country, et cetera. And I really appreciate that ability for him to trust those that are working with him.
Thanks, Natalie.
Yeah, awesome. Appreciate it. So I'll start off the first question, and I don't care which one of you guys wants to take it first, but maybe I'll start with you, Joe. So why did we lose in 2024 in CD2?
2024 was a tough election season in CD2. We lost because we were not united. We had a fierce endorsement battle, which ended up with a significant win for our candidate, Taylor Rahm. And right away, we went into primary mode. Unfortunately, the other candidate broke his word, signed written pledge, and ran against us in a primary. But we were prepared for that. In 6 weeks, we knocked 17,000 doors. Lit dropped another 3,000. We made 20,000 phone calls, and we were well on pace to win that primary. We were doing calling parties, one per night, with about 1,000 calls per night at various people's houses that had signed up to volunteer. So, we had a 100-person strong volunteer army helping Taylor Rahm, and we did such a great job that the Trump team took notice and plucked him to be his senior advisor here in Minnesota. So sadly, the party was not unified, and that led to a loss. And I hope everybody learns that important lesson that, in the Republican Party, we've got a right arm and a left arm, and we need both arms to win. You cannot lop off the right arm and expect a victory in CD2.
Yeah, Joe, as a volunteer myself in that campaign cycle, I personally took Taylor Rahm around my district and introduced him to a bunch of activist individuals that are very outspoken and very interested in the process. And it was pretty disheartening to then have to turn around and tell them that he had dropped out or that he had suspended his campaign, as he decided to word it. It was pretty tough. And the amount of displeasure from those activists as soon as that happened was astronomically worse than I thought it was going to be. And I can only imagine that definitely amplified the situation.
Yeah.
So with that being said, either one of you, whichever one wants to answer this, the other part of the non-unity discussion that entered is Joe Tayrab was the other opponent, right? He was the one that decided to primary. He decided once he won the primary, I guess the question became, and something that Angie Craig made fun of and was quite vocal about, was the lack of endorsement. Our party chose not to endorse Joe Tayrab, even though he was the Republican candidate. We, as a CD congressional district, chose not to endorse him. Can either of you answer why that didn't happen?
Sure, I can take that one. I'm a good soldier. I carry water for the elephant, right? So I understand that after the election, it was my job to move forward with the candidate we had. I reached out to Joe Tayrab, and he indicated that he would like to have the endorsement. And there's two ways for that to happen. The easiest way is just to have 2/3 of the executive full committee vote on that. The other way is to call a full convention, which takes time and there's a lot of logistics involved. So I added consideration of endorsement for Joe Tayrab to the next meeting, and made him aware of when it would be. Joe was unable to attend that meeting, and actually called me earlier that day. We went out to lunch with him and his campaign manager, and they asked me to take it off the agenda. They didn't think it would be good if he ended up not getting endorsed, and there would be negative press over that. So that's what we did. We took it off the agenda at his request and moved forward with no endorsement. It was a difficult time for the party, but under the circumstances and with him not being willing to come to the meeting to make his case, I think it's the best result we could have asked for.
So, Natalie, you were working with one of my campaign team members because the other option, as Joe was talking about, is to have a full convention, full committee convention, and endorse him. But from my understanding, you were actually working on that alternative as well. Is that correct?
Yes, I was working on that alternative as well, and had looked at several different locations. Actually had 2 locations booked just in case the full committee would actually go in that direction. And then obviously, since Joe Tayrab didn't show up to the meeting, it was voted on to not even take that up in the meeting. It wasn't, and I just want to be clear, it was not a vote about the endorsement that actually was voted on. It was a vote that he didn't show to ask for the endorsement, so they took it off the agenda. I really would have probably, that would have been a unifying thought process, is my thought, is if we had an actual endorsing convention where Joe Tayrab could have spoken to all of the delegates and they could decide as a whole. But again, that wasn't possible, and it was taken off the agenda. So
I got a question. I think that it just kind of came to me as you guys have been talking. And um, did Joe Tarab running a primary against an endorsed candidate, did that have a trickle down effect that maybe, affected other candidates across the state, that, prevented CD2 from being able to help in other areas that in retrospect, had we just gotten behind an endorsed candidate, uh, Joe Tarab, I know his big thing was the person who could fundraise the most money. My perspective at that time was it would have really been nice to see Joe, after he didn't get the endorsement, to be a team guy instead of a me guy. And I would have loved to have seen Joe make the decision to hop on board and join Taylor's team and really help fundraise, like he said he was better at doing. And I think we need to start having more candidates, that are willing to be a team guy instead of a me guy. And I guess my question is did that have a potential negative trickle down effect on maybe some state races that maybe CD2 would have been able to be more beneficial in, that they weren't able to because of the resources that were taken up defending an endorsed candidate?
Yeah, absolutely, Drew. So, kind of goes back to the theme of unity. When we don't have an endorsed candidate at every level, it's just we're really missing out on opportunities to spread the message. So, in CD2, when we didn't have the endorsed candidate, we pivoted and we spent our resources helping local House candidates. So, first of all, you end up with a lot of volunteers that are just dispirited, because, maybe the candidate lied directly to their face and they just can't morally support him. And in that case, you're out there knocking doors for you, Drew, right? And we're passing out Drew Roach literature and we're not passing out Joe Tarab literature. We're already at the door. So, that action that divided the party just, it hurt everybody in CD2.
So, Natalie, I'm going to ask you this question a little more directly, and William Beck already kind of touched on it, but what do you think the odds are of winning in 2026?
So, what we didn't touch on, another reason why we probably had a little challenge here in CD2 this last year was, first of all, our governor was on the ticket, on the presidential ticket. And that really drove a lot of the Democrats out to vote. We also, in 2020 and 2022, Tyler Kistner had a third party candidate that took single digit votes away, but still took single digit votes away from mostly probably Democrat voters. And then in this past year, we had a constitutional conservative candidate that was kind of just thrown in there that took a couple percentage points away. So, I think that we do have an option to be able to win, but we're going to have to work together. After these votes and after next convention, whoever wins in each of these positions needs to let go of their grudges and whatever else they might have and really focus on beating the Democrats. That should be our focus as a team across CD2. That means on the House level, the local levels, the Senate levels, state levels, congressional levels, and so forth. And so I think if we come together and actually are focused on our united goal of winning, I think that we'll actually be successful in CD2.
Thanks, guys. That rolls us right into something else that I like that we asked Sarah and William as well. Is I know what you guys have done, but why don't you tell our listeners what's your experience? What gives you these qualifications to do these things? And we'll start with Natalie, and then we'll go to Joe.
Well, I ran my own campaign back in 2022 and pretty much was able to figure out all of CFB, what you need to do. That's the Campaign Finance Board, how much it takes to run a campaign, what it takes to run a campaign, literature, door knocking, phone calling, fundraising, volunteers, and making sure that you really are thankful for their service because they are doing this in their own time, not getting paid. And as a result of that, I was able to, even with the Taylor Rahm campaign, we put together a volunteer group that met, and we had very specific, detailed options for people that wanted to volunteer that fit their needs. Because the one thing is we can say here we need this, but it has to fit the volunteers' capacity. And so I love taking and bringing those people in at the capacity that they're willing to work on. And then also one of the things is fundraising is a huge burn for me. And I'd love to actually not only develop again those volunteer bases, kind of like a precinct strategy, but also develop a war chest for us in CD2 so we can help local and federal candidates.
So, and then Natalie, you had said your campaign. You want to touch base on what campaign you're talking about that you ran on?
Yeah, thank you. I was the endorsed candidate for Senate District 54 in 2022.
Thanks, Natalie. And, you got to run those wonderful primaries the same time I did. So we both lived through some pretty nasty situations. Unfortunately, people that they don't stick to the endorsement.
Right.
And it's really frustrating. And I think as you both have brought pretty publicly, pretty forward, is that when you don't stick to the endorsement, when you don't listen to the people, it just divides the party. And it runs into a situation where you can lose. And I think that same thing could be said for, what Tyler Kistner experienced. We had two Senate districts for sure that had primaries in them. I would have loved to have been working for, helping Tyler Kistner out instead of running a primary.
Right.
I had to focus only on my district and my area because I was in a primary. I couldn't go out and help promote other candidates because of that. And so I think that's something that we need to remember, especially heading into 2026. Now we're going to have a lot more seats up. We're going to have our congressional seats. We're going to have a U.S. Senate seat. We're going to have the governor's seat. We're going to have all of the other executive branch seats, and the Senate and the House at the state level are going to be running. Not to mention all the other local candidates that would run from, mayor, city council, those types of things. So the one thing that I want to remind people is that when you get into a primary, primaries hurt.
They do.
And they hurt everybody. It's not just down ticket. It's not just up ticket. It hurts everybody because I don't get to focus on my own district. I have to focus on my own district and not be able to help everybody else.
And that's a good point, Bill, is because when we look at the Democrats, we say, man, why do they just seem to be so unified? They seem to be, win sometimes and get behind their candidates. It's typically because they don't primary their endorsed candidate. When they've got a candidate that gets endorsed by their BPOU or their congressional district, they don't run another candidate against them, regardless of, where the body, splits between candidates. They get unified behind that candidate and they're all in. And I think the Republican Party needs to start taking notice of that. And I think that is the really big difference between what separates Republicans and Democrats is the fact that, it's always again, we've got too many people that run that are me guys or me gals instead of team players. And we need to start making sure that those moderate or the establishment candidates that seek endorsement that don't get it learn to be team players and learn to respect the process and know that the caucus process that we put forward and the endorsing that we do is really one of the better processes across the country. And when we get behind those candidates, they typically win. And we need to start taking notice and start doing that. So to me, it's just like a no-brainer.
Yeah. So Joe, why don't you give us a little bit about what your campaign experience or your qualifications are?
Okay, so I've been at this for about 12 years now. I came in with the Ron Paul Revolution in 2012, so the second time around.
Yep, his second attempt.
Yeah, and my passion has always been firearms rights. I was down at the Capitol when we passed the concealed carry bill. The group back then was called Concealed Carry Rights Now. Later turned into the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus, who still lobbies for our gun rights down at the Capitol today. And I was the Scott County GOP chair from 2017 to 2021. So during the time, there were no Democrats in Scott County. Sadly, later on, we ended up losing one seat to Brad Tabke, which we almost took back last cycle, except for some mysteriously found votes.
And lost votes. We threw 20 of them in the garbage.
Shredded first.
Yeah. We've been following that issue closely, and there are some reforms getting put in Scott County. But we were robbed, or we feel robbed. So then, from 21 to 23, I was kind of on the sidelines, and then in 23, I came back to chair CD2.
Well, welcome back to the game.
Thanks.
I appreciate all your involvement and things like that. I guess the last question and the last part that's most important is, what do you see? Where do you see CD2 going for the future? What's your guys' plans?
I want to continue with our awesome fundraising efforts. The last biennium was one of the best we ever had. We've got about $16,000 in the bank now, which is historically very high for an off year. And I'm sure that if Natalie gets in, she's going to help us with another awesome fundraiser. That's a key thing. That's how we help out our candidates up and down the ballot. And then, rumor is that Angie Craig might not run again, might run for Senate or a different spot. If that's the case, CD2 is going to be very competitive. We'll probably have a lot of good candidates come forward, and I will oversee a fair endorsement process to make sure that we endorse the best candidate, and then we will work to get that candidate elected.
Yeah, I will attest. I have seen some crazy stuff going on out there. There's people registering for new websites, and Erin May Quaid has registered for a bunch of Erin May Quaid for Congress, different names for her websites. Senator Matt Klein had changed his website to say Klein for Congress for a short window of time, and then it went back to his for Senate. So that'll be interesting. And the rumor is that Angie Craig has filed for a website for running for Senate. So it'll be interesting to see if that comes to fruition, if that's actually true. But that's the current rumor. So, Natalie, what's your plans for the next 2 years?
So I have a 4-step sort of guide. And of course, this will all depend on who's chair, if they'll let me and allow me to have that freedom, which I know Joe will. But one thing is, of course, getting the grassroots network. Just having that experience, getting some volunteers for Taylor Rom together and organized. We really have a lot of amazing people, and even just calling into the district, we can put them to work in the areas that they're passionate about. 2 is, of course, that fundraising goal, and I would like to see us raising $50,000 to $100,000 in the next 2 years. That's a lofty goal, but I think that we can do it with a plan of a couple large events per year, smaller events, and then getting some of those grassroots, just minimal sort of donations, or like we're having an actual concert the day before our convention on April 11th, and hopefully we'll raise a couple $1,000s there. Another thing is messaging, and I think especially messaging, we need to be strong on our messaging and help our candidates. And that's one last thing is candidates, making sure that we find good candidates, that we support our candidates. I met with many candidates across CD2 this last cycle, but I would like to actually have a little bit more training available to them, and then also start a Google resource drive or something similar for those candidates, so they don't have to keep searching, who should I go for this? It would automatically have those resources available to them. So.
Well, I look forward to it. You guys have a great plan for what the next 2 years should look like, and that's fully why I throw my support behind you guys. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens here on Saturday. I hope all of our delegates and alternates show up, and they participate and they vote for the candidates that are ready and best fit to serve CD2.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead, like I said, I'll go ahead and echo that as well. I mean, we're at a point now where, gearing up to go into 2026, it's important that we continue to reach the base and grow the base. And, the 4 people that we brought on our show today really are, huge assets to CD2, and really is what's going to help shape us and get us in a position and maintain the position that we've been in to try to take back our state in 2026 and move the conservative movement and values that we are, all eager to have back and in the state legislature. So it's important that we get behind these folks, and our delegates and alternates show up on Saturday and do the right thing, because it's not the time to sit on the couch and take a day off. We got to get back out there and know that freedom isn't free, and it takes getting out there and spending the time on those Saturdays to come out to a CD2 convention and really have your voice be heard, because that's really where it starts. So we just really want to motivate those people to show up on Saturday and support these good candidates that are coming.
That's right. Victory goes to those who show up. Thanks a lot for all you do, guys.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. We appreciate you very much, and thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
Thank you.